There is a danger that hides quietly, unnoticed, yet it can destroy the soul. Padre Pio spoke of a condition more frightening than open sin, a false sense of safety, a belief that one is saved while still walking in darkness. He once saw a sinner who died convinced he was safe, only to face the truth too late. The sorrow of what Padre Pio witnessed shook him deeply. This is a warning for everyone. Comfort without truth can be deadly. Pay attention, question your heart, and never be satisfied with false peace. It was a cold evening. Padre Pio knelt alone in the chapel, his eyes fixed on the tabernacle. The silence was heavy, broken only by his quiet prayers. Suddenly, he felt a presence. Before him appeared a soul, standing calmly, dressed in fine clothing. There was no fear, no trembling, no signs of pain. It was different from the souls of purgatory, who shake with guilt, and unlike the blessed, who shine with peace. This soul seemed certain, confident, as if nothing was wrong. Padre Pio watched quietly. There was something unnatural in the stillness of this soul. It did not plead for mercy, nor did it show regret. It was composed, calm, even proud. The presence filled the chapel in a strange way, pressing on the silence with an invisible weight. It was as though the air itself carried a warning. The soul began to speak, though not with loud words. Padre Pio felt the meaning more than he heard it. The message was clear. This soul believed it had done nothing wrong. Every sin, every failing, had been hidden behind a mask of comfort and self-justification. There was no trembling for mistakes, no sorrow for wrongdoing, only confidence in a false safety. Padre Pio's heart sank. He realized the danger that had filled this soul. It was not the openly sinful who were most at risk, but those who believed themselves secure. The calmness, the self-assurance was a trap. The soul had accepted the illusion of goodness without questioning itself, without seeking true forgiveness or change. As he watched, Padre Pio felt the weight of the soul's blindness. There was no joy in its presence, no warmth of love, only emptiness, a cold certainty that all was well, even though it was not. This vision was unlike anything he had seen before. He had encountered souls in torment, begging for help, crying out in regret. He had seen the blessed, glowing with light and peace. But this soul was neither. It was a warning, walking in a dangerous shadow, unaware of the fall that awaited. Time seemed to stretch in the chapel. The soul did not speak of punishment or threat. There was no anger or rage, only the quiet pride of one convinced of innocence. Its stillness pressed on Padre Pio, showing him a truth that could shake anyone. The mind can deceive itself more than the body ever could. A sinner who trusts in appearances, who measures life by comfort and ease, can walk into darkness thinking it is light. Padre Pio remained silent, prayerful, observing. He understood that this vision was not for punishment but for warning. The soul's composure, its calm certainty, was the most dangerous enemy. It was a condition invisible to most, hidden behind daily routines and habitual sins. The soul's appearance in the chapel, dressed and confident, was a mirror of countless hearts. They appear safe, respectable, and certain. Yet beneath the surface lies a truth they refuse to see. The chapel remained cold and quiet. Padre Pio felt the presence slowly fade, leaving behind a chilling silence. The weight of the warning lingered in the air. Even without words, the message was clear. Comfort without truth is dangerous. Confidence without self-examination can be deadly. The soul had appeared, confident and still, but its danger was real and silent, hidden behind a mask of peace. The soul spoke with a calm pride that filled the chapel. It greeted Padre Pio with a confidence that seemed to shine on the surface, but beneath it, a shadow lingered. "I have lived well," the soul said, listing his virtues with certainty. He spoke of his good reputation, of the respect he had earned in the world, of the masses he attended and the gifts he gave to the poor. Every word carried pride, a belief that virtue could protect him from any judgment. "I have done nothing that deserves punishment," the soul insisted. His voice carried no doubt, no hesitation. Every claim seemed polished, rehearsed, as if he had repeated it countless times before. He measured his life by outward actions, by appearances that others admired. In his mind, virtue was a shield, and he was untouchable. Padre Pio remained silent but attentive. His eyes traced the outline of the soul, noticing the small, almost invisible darkness that clung around him. It was subtle, easy to miss, yet undeniable. It was not fire, nor visible torment, but a shadow born from self-deception, from pride and false security. The more the soul spoke of his goodness, the more the darkness seemed to cling. It was proof of what Padre Pio had feared. A man can live a life of comfort and reputation, yet still be blind to his own failings. The soul continued to justify himself, pointing to every act of charity, every polite gesture, every mass attended as evidence of innocence. He did not speak of love, humility, or true repentance. He spoke only of what he had done to maintain his image, to be seen as respectable and moral. Each word, each claim, built a wall around him, separating him from truth and grace. Padre Pio sensed the danger clearly. Outward virtue, without humility and awareness, could hide a heart far from God. The soul believed that doing good for recognition or habit was enough. He had measured life with rules and appearances rather than with love and conscience. The pride in his tone, the calm certainty, and the subtle darkness surrounding him revealed a life at risk, even while the soul felt safe. The more the soul insisted on his goodness, the heavier the shadow grew. Padre Pio understood that this man's mind had closed to self-examination. He did not see himself as he truly was. Every virtue mentioned was a mask, hiding fear, guilt, and an avoidance of truth. Even small faults, ignored or justified, added to the darkness. Silence fell again. The soul's prideful words echoed in the chapel, but the shadow remained, almost tangible. It moved with him, unseen by the world but clear to Padre Pio. There was no anger, no complaint, only calm insistence on innocence. Yet the weight of what the soul could not see pressed on the air, pressing on Padre Pio's heart. It was a lesson in how pride and self-justification can blind a person completely, leaving them certain of goodness while walking unknowingly toward danger. Padre Pio listened, feeling the truth behind every claim. The soul's confident defense, filled with pride and self-approval, carried a silent warning. Appearances and actions alone do not guarantee safety. The darkness that clung to him, though small, was real. It was the mark of a soul that had deceived itself completely, convinced that virtue alone was enough to escape judgment. Padre Pio looked at the soul carefully. Then he asked a question that cut through the pride and certainty. "Did you love God?" he said softly but firmly. The chapel seemed to hold its breath. The soul paused, confident at first, then replied, "I followed the rules." Padre Pio's eyes did not leave him. He asked again the same question, giving the soul no chance to hide behind appearances. "Did you love God?" he asked. The soul's calm began to falter. His answer came slower, quieter. I did what I was told," he admitted. The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than the proud declarations that came before. The silence that followed was different from the first. There was no pride now, only a faint, uneasy awareness. The soul began to sense a truth he had avoided for his entire life. Following rules and keeping appearances had felt safe. Attending Mass, giving to charity, living politely in the eyes of others, these had been his measures of goodness. Yet, faced with the question of love, he could feel their emptiness. Padre Pio asked the question again, and the soul could no longer hide. "Did you love God?" This time, his voice was quieter, almost trembling. He began to understand that religion is not a set of rules, not a list of deeds to perform. It is a relationship, a surrender of the heart, not a contract or a checklist of actions. He had believed that following rules could earn safety, but now he saw the gap between obedience and love. The realization hit him with a quiet force. All the virtues he had counted, all the appearances he had maintained, could not replace the love that God asks for. Rules alone do not save. Obedience without heart is empty. The soul could see the shadow that Padre Pio had noticed from the beginning, the small darkness that clung to him, invisible to the world but real and dangerous. It was born of self-deception, pride, and a misunderstanding of what faith truly requires. Padre Pio remained patient, waiting as the truth unfolded in the soul's mind. There was no need for anger, no need for words beyond the question. The question itself revealed what the soul had avoided seeing. The heart cannot be measured by outward acts alone. Love cannot be replaced by ritual, and true salvation cannot be counted like points on a ledger. The soul began to tremble inwardly, feeling the difference between rule-following and true love. He understood now that life is not a contract to be completed but a relationship to be lived. Every action without love, every virtue without heart, left a soul at risk. The calm certainty that had once surrounded him now gave way to unease. Pride was replaced by a quiet fear, a recognition of how far he had relied on appearances and ignored what mattered most. In the silence of the chapel, the weight of this understanding pressed on the soul. The simplicity of the question revealed a reality he could no longer deny. Love and obedience are not the same. Following rules can give comfort, but only surrender of the heart can bring true safety. The soul had glimpsed the truth too late to escape the lesson, feeling the emptiness of a life built on rules rather than love. Padre Pio watched without judgment. The soul's pride had fallen away, replaced by a trembling awareness. He saw the danger of religion without heart, the danger of obedience without love. The question had revealed what all the outward virtues could not. Salvation is not earned through actions alone. It is given through a relationship with God, through surrender, through love. The chapel felt colder as the soul's pride became more visible. It clung to him like a heavy cloak, a layer of self-righteousness that made him feel safe even when danger was near. Padre Pio could see it clearly. This comfort, this false sense of security, was more frightening than any attack of darkness or fire. Demons can frighten, but self-deception quietly destroys from within. The soul believed he was safe, and that made the danger greater. The man looked around, confused and troubled. "I followed the rules," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I did everything I was supposed to do. Why is there no light? Why do I feel empty?" His eyes searched the chapel, hoping for a sign he had done well. But the answer did not come from the walls, the candles, or the tabernacle. The truth was inside him, where he had avoided looking for so long. Padre Pio spoke softly, his words calm but firm. "Rules are not God," he said. "You never came to him. You followed law and habit, but your heart was far from love. You obeyed without surrender. You measured life with acts, not with devotion. That is why there is no light for you." The soul's pride faltered. The confidence that had carried him vanished, replaced by fear and confusion. He had counted on rules, on outward virtue, on appearances that others admired. Now he could feel the emptiness that obedience alone could not fill. The warmth he expected from a life well lived did not come. The light he hoped to see was absent. The soul realized that all his measures of goodness had been tools for comfort, not paths to God. Padre Pio watched silently, seeing the man struggle with the truth. The shadow that clung to him was not fire or punishment, but the mark of self-deception. It was terrifying because it did not warn him. It had wrapped him in safety, lulled him into thinking he was secure. The soul had walked his entire life believing he was doing well, and now he faced the emptiness of a heart untouched by real love. "I thought I was safe," the man whispered almost to himself. "I thought following the rules was enough. But why is it not?" His voice broke as realization came. The truth was clear, painful, and unavoidable. Rules alone cannot bring salvation. Habit without heart, law without surrender, and virtue without love leave the soul empty and blind. Padre Pio's gaze was gentle but unwavering. He did not condemn with anger, He showed the truth, the same truth that the man had avoided all his life. The weight of obedience without love pressed on the soul. Pride had masked his blindness, but now the mask was slipping. The man could see the danger he had never imagined, the danger of comfort that hides the heart's distance from God. Silence filled the chapel. The soul's confusion, his trembling, and the faint shadow of fear marked the unveiling of spiritual blindness. He understood that following rules alone was not enough. Without seeking God with the heart, without surrendering fully to love, all actions can become empty. He could feel for the first time the coldness of a life guided by pride rather than devotion, the terror of safety that is only an illusion. The soul began to see with a clarity that frightened him. For the first time, he noticed the weight of all the small sins he had ignored. Resentment, pride, coldness toward others, gossip, things he had thought were unimportant, harmless, or excusable. They had accumulated quietly, day after day, until they formed a barrier between him and God. Each overlooked fault, each moment dismissed as small, now shone in harsh light, revealing the truth he had avoided. He thought of the masses he had attended. He had been present in the church, following the rituals, saying the words, bowing at the right moments. Yet he could feel now that his heart had never been there. Attendance had been a duty, a habit, a mark of appearance. His prayers had flowed from the lips but not from the heart. His confessions had been fulfilled as obligations, repeated without sorrow or true intention. The soul realized that action without love, ritual without devotion, was empty. Tears came to his eyes as he remembered the opportunities he had ignored. The advice of friends and spiritual guides, the warnings in sermons, the examples of true faith, he had heard them all. He had believed that he already knew enough, that he had done enough, that he had nothing left to learn. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" he cried, the words raw with regret and shock. The voice in reply was gentle, firm, and sorrowful. "They did, but you believed you had nothing to learn." The truth hit him like a weight he could not carry. Every sin, every overlooked moment of pride or harshness had been noted. Every act performed without love had built a wall between him and God. He had measured life by appearances, by deeds, by what others could see, and in doing so, he had dismissed the inner life entirely. The heart had been left untouched while the outward form continued. Now he understood that salvation is not in mere action, but in the surrender of the heart, in the presence of love in every thought, every word, and every deed. He trembled, overwhelmed by the accumulation of years lived without true awareness. The sins that seemed small in daily life now appeared as stones piled high, each one a barrier he had built himself. He had thought himself good because he had followed rules, attended Mass, given to charity, and kept appearances. Yet in reality, these were empty gestures when the heart had not been part of them. Padre Pio observed quietly, seeing the soul confront a truth many never see. The human mind can excuse, overlook, and rationalize. Comfort can hide danger. Pride can prevent recognition of fault. The soul's cry was the cry of those who live superficially, thinking safety comes from action alone. And yet, the message was clear. The guidance was always there, the signs always present. The failure had been in the soul's refusal to learn, to look honestly, to bring the heart to God. Now, with each small sin revealed, the soul felt a weight unlike any before. The accumulation of what he had ignored created a sorrow and fear that filled him completely. He could see how far he had strayed, not through great crimes, but through a lifetime of overlooked, dismissed failures. The cost of comfort without truth, of obedience without love, had become painfully clear. The soul felt a sudden weight, heavier than anything he had ever known. It was not punishment for great crimes, not for violent or shocking sins, but for the quiet complacency and presumption that had filled his life. The moments he had ignored, the small failures he had dismissed, the pride he had clung to, all of it pulled him down, as if an invisible force had taken hold. Every excuse, every rationalization, every false sense of safety now pressed upon him with unstoppable gravity. He cried out, desperate, his voice shaking with fear, "Please, give me another chance. I will change. I will repent. I will love." His words echoed in the emptiness, but the answer came not in anger, but in sorrow. "I was waiting for you your whole life," the voice said softly. The truth hit him with unbearable clarity. All the time he had believed himself safe, God had been reaching, waiting, calling, inviting him to a life of real love. And yet, he had ignored the call, thinking he was already secure. The illusion of safety became a prison. Every virtue he had counted, every appearance he had polished, had trapped him in a false sense of goodness. The walls of his life, built from habit and pride, now closed in. He had thought following rules, attending Mass, and giving to charity could shield him. He had counted actions without heart. But the weight of what he had ignored, of the love he had refused, now held him fast, and there was no turning back. The soul felt an emptiness unlike any he had known. Not a physical pain, not a torment of fire, but a void that reached to the heart. He had been safe in his mind, calm in his confidence, yet now every comfort was stripped away. The pride that had protected him, that had made him feel respectable and moral, became chains. He understood too late that true safety never comes from appearances, from rituals, or from outward virtue. It comes from surrender, from love, from the heart opening to God. Fear and sorrow filled him, mingled with regret so sharp it seemed to burn. He thought of every moment he could have changed, every word he could have spoken, every act of love he had refused. The path had been open all along, yet he had walked past it, convinced of his own goodness. Now he faced the final weight of his choices. Complacency, presumption, and self-deception had built a barrier he could no longer cross. Padre Pio watched silently, feeling the intensity of the moment. The soul's plea, though desperate, could not alter the truth. The danger that had been hidden in comfort, pride, and habit had reached its full force. The gravity of a life without true surrender, a life of outward virtue without inward love, had claimed him. The silence that followed was full of sorrow and loss. The soul had realized too late that salvation is not in what is done, but in the heart that truly seeks God. The chapel felt colder than ever as the weight of the soul's condition pressed down. The illusion of safety, the confidence in mere action, had become a cage. The soul understood now the cost of neglect, the cost of ignoring God's invitation. Every moment of life, every chance to love, had been a doorway, and he had walked past it. The soul's cry faded into silence, leaving only the sorrowful presence of a love that had always been ready, waiting, and denied. Padre Pio collapsed to his knees, his body heavy with grief. It was not terror that weighed him down, but sorrow deeper than words. He had seen the fall of a man who believed he was safe, a soul blind in his confidence, certain of his salvation. The realization struck Padre Pio with a pain that burned in his heart. This was no ordinary grief. It was the grief of witnessing a soul lost not through obvious sin, but through the quiet blindness of self-assurance. He understood something that chilled him. Hell is filled less by those who openly rebel than by those who are self-assured. Those who live in comfort, who trust appearances and habits without heart, are at the greatest risk. The devil's victory lies not in making people commit evil openly, but in convincing them that they have no need for repentance. The man he had seen had followed rules, performed rituals, and kept a good reputation, yet he had never truly surrendered his heart. Padre Pio's grief grew as he considered the subtle power of self-righteousness. It is harder to heal than open sin. A sinner may feel guilt, may cry out for help, may be drawn toward God by fear or regret. But the self-assured, confident in their own goodness, can resist truth their entire life. Pride becomes a shield and false security a prison. Even warnings and guidance may fall on deaf ears. It is a darkness that hides in comfort, unnoticed until it is too late. He thought of the countless people who, like the soul he had witnessed, live believing that rituals, appearances, and external virtue are enough. They attend Mass, give to charity, and follow rules, but their hearts remain distant. They believe in their own safety, their own goodness, and in doing so, they walk blind through life. The tragedy is not in what they do, but in what they fail to feel, fail to surrender, and fail to love. The weight of the revelation pressed on Padre Pio. He understood that salvation is not a contract, not a ledger of good deeds. It is a relationship with God, lived in love, humility, and constant awareness of one's need for grace. Those who do not see this, who rely on rules and reputation, carry a danger far greater than any sin of excess. They are blind, and their blindness can last a lifetime. His heart ached for the man he had seen, for the countless others who walked the same path. The grief was not just for punishment, but for the lost potential of a life wasted in self-deception. The devil does not need to tempt these souls strongly. He only needs to make them comfortable. Comfort, when paired with pride, becomes deadly. The tragedy of a life spent in assumed safety is invisible to the world but clear to those who can see. Padre Pio remained on his knees, silent, mourning the fall he had witnessed. His soul felt the sorrow of someone who understood the deepest danger: self-righteousness. It is subtle, quiet, and invisible, yet it can destroy more than open sin. The man had been lost not through great crimes, but through certainty in his own virtue. The grief of witnessing such blindness was unbearable, a heavy weight in the heart of a man who knew the mercy of God and the cost of ignoring it. Throughout the man's life, grace had followed him quietly. Angels had tried to guide him in gentle ways. Small warnings came through moments of discomfort, sudden thoughts, and inner nudges toward humility. There were chances to stop, to reflect, to change direction. But each moment was brushed aside. He was busy, confident, certain that he was already fine. The guidance was not loud or forceful. It was soft and patient, and that made it easy to ignore. Again and again, help was offered. In a sermon that stirred the heart for a moment. In a quiet feeling after confession. In the example of someone who lived with true humility. Each time, grace knocked. Each time it was dismissed, not with anger, but with indifference. He did not say no openly. He simply said later or thought there was no need. Salvation was offered 1,000 times, and 1,000 times it was refused, not through rebellion, but through neglect. There are two dangerous states for the soul. One is despair, where a person believes they are beyond mercy. The other is presumption, where a person believes they do not need mercy. The man had lived in the second state. He assumed safety. He assumed acceptance. He assumed God was satisfied. This belief closed his heart more tightly than fear ever could. The true torment came into focus. It was not fire, not pain, not punishment as imagined by the mind. It was the realization that he never knew God. He had known rules, habits, customs, and appearances. But he had never known God as a living presence. He had never spoken with him from the heart. He had never listened. Now that absence became unbearable. Hell revealed itself not as a chamber of torture, but as a relationship refused. God had been near for his entire life, waiting, inviting, offering love. The man had kept his distance, choosing comfort and control over surrender. Now that distance was fixed. What hurt most was knowing that love had always been there, and he had walked past it without seeing it. The gifts were never unopened because they were hidden. They were unopened because they were ignored. Grace had filled his days, but indifference had filled his heart. The weight of this truth became the soul's sorrow. Not hatred, not rage, but the loss of what could have been. In conclusion, this is the warning left behind. Grace can be refused quietly. Faith can exist without love. Safety can be an illusion. The greatest danger is not falling, but believing there is no need to rise. A heart closed by certainty may never ask, never seek, never receive. And the greatest loss is not punishment, but realizing too late that God was always near, waiting to be known.